Be honest for a second. Do you feel just completely exhausted and polarized by the modern digital world? Because if you're constantly overwhelmed by doom scrolling, anxiety, and just the relentless noise of social media, well, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone. Take a second to really reflect on your own digital fatigue right now. We are in the middle of a massive crisis of attention and mental health. But what if the ultimate solution isn't some new app or a temporary digital detox? What if it's actually something incredibly ancient?
We're looking at a pretty fascinating contrast today. On one side, we have ancient texts written over 2,500 years ago. And on the other, the absolute cutting edge of modern psychology and neuroscience. In this explainer, we're going to bridge that massive gap. We'll see exactly how a deeply ancient text acts as a highly precise software update, basically, for the psychological bugs we all experience in our hyper-connected lives today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to our explainer on the Majjhima Nikāya Mūlapaṇṇāsa. Now, I know that name might sound a little intimidating at first, but please do not look at this as just some dusty religious relic. Based on some really groundbreaking academic analysis, this text is actually a total masterclass in human psychology. Think of it as a 2,500-year-old survival guide that is perfectly tailored for the internet era.
All right, here's the agenda for our journey today. We're going to explore 6 key areas. First, the digital mind crisis. Second, decoding self-creation. Third, mindful media consumption. Fourth, extinguishing anger in conflict. Fifth, the spiritual materialism trap. And finally, a modern brain healing manual.
So, starting off with Section 1, the digital mind crisis.
You know, we live in a world of just extreme viewpoints, deep social alienation, and constant mental overload. But this feeling of being utterly overwhelmed, it isn't just a tech problem. It's actually a structural problem with how human beings process reality itself. The Majjhima Nikāya Mūlapaṇṇāsa consists of 50 foundational discourses. Scholars actually call this an architecture of wisdom, and these 50 root discourses aren't just random stories. They're incredibly logical. They serve as a complete epistemological manifesto, literally a blueprint meant to radically restructure human thoughts and free us from those cognitive traps that are driving us crazy today.
Moving right along to Section 2, Decoding Self-Creation.
Let's see how this text breaks down the very illusion of our identity, which, let's face it, is arguably the root cause of all our digital age anxiety. Historically, there was this massive intellectual clash regarding human value. On one side, you had the Brahmins, who valued humans by their caste, and thinkers like Sakkaka, who argued for a permanent, unchanging self. But the Buddha completely dismantled this. He proposed that human value is based purely on ethics and wisdom, and he introduced this concept of anatta, or non-self. He objectively proved that clinging to a rigid identity is just a losing game.
And that brings us to a really vital concept known as papanka. This translates to mental proliferation and the creation of ego. Think about it. When you read a single, irritating comment online and your brain suddenly spins it into this massive day-ruining narrative, yeah, that is papanka in action. It directly mirrors what modern psychology calls cognitive biases. It's basically the ancient equivalent of the echo chambers and endless thought loops we get trapped in online every single day.
To break this down further, the Mūlapaṇṇāsa Sutta categorizes humans into 4 levels. This ranges from an ordinary person who clings super tightly to the concept of mine, all the way up to an enlightened being who is totally free of attachment. The crucial takeaway here is that our suffering comes from a terribly flawed perception of ownership. When we constantly claim things, statuses, and especially our opinions online as mine, we are totally setting ourselves up for inevitable misery when the world inevitably pushes back.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, mindful media consumption. Let's shift gears and focus on our modern digital diets. How does a 2,500-year-old philosophy treat the incredibly modern concept of information overload? Well, consider the concept of fasahara. This means mental nourishment through contact and consumption. The texts argue that humans are fed not just by the physical food on our plates, but by the media, the news, and the social contacts we consume daily. Every scroll, every click, every video, it's quite literally food for your mind.
There is an incredibly stark but very true warning in these texts. Information consumption without mindfulness leads directly to stress, hatred, and social division. Think about your own habits for a second here. If you sit down and eat junk food all day, your body's going to get sick, right? Unmindful consumption of toxic digital media is the exact recipe for the misery of modern doom scrolling. Your mind is simply reacting to the terrible diet you're feeding it.
But fortunately, we're actually given a solution. The Sabbasava Sutta outlines 7 strategies to manage these mental defilements. Briefly, these include using wisdom, practicing restraint, mindful consumption, and developing the mind. And these strategies brilliantly mirror modern psychological techniques. Things like cognitive restructuring, controlling our environmental stimuli, and building emotional resilience, they were all systematically mapped out over 2 millennia ago. Crazy, right?
All right, on to Section 4, extinguishing anger in conflict.
Let's explore how we handle extreme polarization and anger. This is a highly relevant issue if you've ever spent more than, 5 minutes in today's comment sections. There's this incredibly visceral teaching from the Kākāpama Sutta. It says, even if robbers cut you limb from limb with a saw, holding anger means you fail to follow my teachings. Wow. Contrast that intense, extreme ancient imagery with our trivial modern irritations. We lose our minds over a mean tweet or a differing political opinion. If you can be asked to let go of anger while literally being attacked with a saw, I think we can definitely let go of our internet rage.
But how do we actually do that? Well, the texts tell us to erase the physical and mental space that holds anger by completely dissolving the ego. Walk through the logic here. If you remove the ego, if you completely remove the me that feels offended or attacked, you successfully destroy the very capacity to hold on to anger. Without a solid target to hit, the insult just passes right through empty space.
Okay, Section 5, the spiritual materialism trap. Let's move to a fascinating warning about the modern wellness industry and the spiritual traps we so easily fall into today. The Rathavanita Sutta outlines 7 relay chariots. Imagine taking a journey where you ride one chariot to a station, hop off, get on the next one, and so on, going from basic morality all the way up to deep concentration and wisdom. This brilliantly illustrates that every stage of practice is merely a tool. It's just a vehicle to get you to the next step. It's never the final destination itself. Because of that, this serves as a really stark warning against treating mindfulness as a competitive aesthetic, or what we call spiritual materialism. The source text strictly warns us against turning inner peace into a competitive image. Think of all the performative wellness we see online today, the perfectly lit meditation spots on Instagram, the bragging about consecutive streaks on meditation apps. When mindfulness becomes just another identity to flex online, well, we've fallen right back into the trap of the ego.
And finally, Section 6, Modern Brain Healing Manual.
For this last part, we're going to connect this ancient epistemology directly to modern neuroscience to see how it physically changes us. The Satipatthana Sutta teaches practical mindfulness in every single posture: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. So this isn't about running away to a cave and escaping reality. It's about anchoring yourself continuously in the present moment through your everyday, completely mundane movements. It's a highly practical, moment-to-moment grounding technique.
Let's look at how this builds into real, measurable biological change. If you contrast the wandering mind, filled with anxiety and ego, with the mindful brain, anchored in the present, it's like night and day. Modern neuroscience shows us that this ancient practice of continuous mindfulness actually quiets the brain's default mode network. That's the exact network responsible for our endless, anxious overthinking. So by reducing this network's activity, we're bringing true biological inner freedom to an overstimulated mind. It's a real game changer.
We've covered a ton of ground today, bridging literally thousands of years of wisdom directly to your screen. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final provocative question. What kind of digital food will you choose to consume today? Really think about that before your next click. Try applying this 2,500-year-old blueprint to your very next digital interaction, and just watch how it transforms your reality. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.